Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with, the second in the Vox 2-disc reissue of all of Dvořák's concerted works. Now, we've already talked about the cello concerto with Zara Nelsova and other short works for cello and violin and orchestra. And here we have the big cojones that we're missing. Ruggiero Ricci playing the violin concerto with Walter Susskind in the St. Louis Symphony, who also accompanies Rudolf Firkušny in one of his several recordings. I think he made 3 of the Dvořák piano concerto. This version of the piano concerto is the revised piano part, not the Dvořák original, which I tend to prefer nowadays, and which I think ought to be played out of respect for Dvořák's intentions, because the earlier theory about the piano concerto was that it's unpopular because it's very clunky and unpianistic, which it is. I mean, there's no question about that. But Dvořák was a pianist and an organist and a viola player and many other things. But I mean, he played the organ in church. He played keyboard all over the place. His piano writing is perfectly marvelous when he wants it to be. I mean, like the Dumke Trio and in his chamber works and whatnot. So this business about the concerto being somehow incompetent, which is really what the issue was, I think is completely wrong. Dvořák was doing something intentional, and you can learn more about that if you want to take a look at my chat on the Dvořák piano concerto, where Firkušny comes up again, but not this performance. I don't think. Well, maybe it did. I don't remember. But he's the big guy. I mean, he sort of owned this piece for the second half of the 20th century, and it's an absolutely beautiful performance. And if you don't know the Dvořák piano concerto, you really are missing something special. It has gorgeous melodies. The opening movement is modeled quite transparently on Beethoven and Mozart. He wanted to write a classical concerto. Brahms actually admired the piece precisely for those qualities, I suspect, that caused it to be revised, because it wasn't an obvious work in any way, shape, or form. It's a very unique work, one that's really taken until, in many ways, it still isn't quite understood, I think, as it should be. But anyway, you've got Firkušny and Susskind. Susskind, by the way, was born in Prague. He was also Czech, for what that's worth. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? We had that chat about nationalist stuff in music and how bad it can be, and the foolishness sometimes of assuming that just because someone comes from a place that they can do the music of that place particularly well. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. Firkušny was a great performer of Czech music, particularly Janacek's piano music. He studied with Janacek, but he was also pretty terrific at Beethoven and a bunch of other things. So anyway, be that as it may, this is the revised version of the piano concerto, a lovely performance by a master who really, really got the piece. So there's that. Now, the violin concerto with Ruggiero Ricci. The Dvořák violin concerto at the time this was recorded, which was around 1974, here it is, was something of a rarity. It was, of course, performed all over the place in Czechoslovakia. I mean, the reference recording. Oh, no, I can't do that. Reference recordings are talking about that, but the Czechs did it all over the place. And one of the recordings with Josef Suk is sort of the standout version, or was the standout version. Doing the violin concerto was really fairly unusual. Nathan Milstein played it, and a couple other violinists. But it was also considered to be a second-rate piece because Dvořák wrote it for Joachim, who never played it, because he wanted Dvořák to revise the form to make it more what he thought the form should be. And Dvořák basically said, go screw yourself, which is not a good idea when you're talking to the most famous violin virtuoso in Central Europe. That was not wise on Dvořák's part, but he stuck to his guns, and as a result, the concerto passed into obscurity. It is a glorious piece of music, and it is one of the best of all the romantic violin concertos from a formal point of view, because it has 3 movements that are all almost exactly equal in length, or they should be, if the performance is okay. And it just flows beautifully, one movement into the next. It's marvelous. I mean, the first 2 movements are connected. The last one is separate. But wow, what a great piece we are discovering now, or we've discovered in the past 20 years or so. And Ricci is just a splendid violinist. You know, he had a big, beefy tone, gutsy really big personality and wonderful projection, and he didn't linger. He does not linger over the first movement. I fell for this performance years ago just for the way he handles the entrance of the violin in tempo, not with this sort of slow, soupy, sweaty puddle. He plays it. He makes it move. I mean, his tone sometimes is a little rough here and there, but I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, he does it all with artistic point. His real name was Roger, by the way, not Ruggiero. He changed it back because he was of Italian stock, but he was born in California, and his parents named him Roger because they wanted their kids to have nice American names. And it was, we did a video about stupid nationalism in classical music and how, Europeans think that Americans are American and they don't understand Europe. Well, I mean, America was so besotted with the European origins of classical music that American artists would have been ignored unless they had European-sounding names. And so we have Ruggiero Ricci. Another one was Zara Nelsova, who played the cello in the cello concerto. It was also from like San Francisco or someplace like that anyway. And I mean, the most famous of all of them was Olga Samarov, who was one of Stokowski's wives. Her real name was Lucy Hickenlooper, and she became Olga Samarov. I mean, it's a very, very funny story, actually, all of these people whipping their names around. So anyway, Roger Ricci, which sounds kind of a little bit more like Roger Rabbit now, doesn't it? But Roger Ricci, or Ruggiero, was a first-class violinist. He was in very, very good form here. And so this is a wonderful disc. It really is. It's excellent. And I'm so happy to have it back in very, very fine sound by the crack team of Mark Obort and Joanna Nikrens, who are, legendary producers. They did a beautiful job with these recordings. And Susskind is a terrific accompanist. It's just wonderful. It really is. So get it and keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.